Hey everybody, Jason here. So we didn't have a video last week because Wavedash was sponsoring Super Smash Con, and the team was there supporting the event, playing in the event, doing a panel, and we also aired a video on stream on Sunday. So for those of you that missed that, we've uploaded it to Facebook and YouTube. I'll put a link below so that you can go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. And basically, we were there to do some more play testing, some more research, to connect with the audience again, but also to play. I actually went better than my normal 2-2. Went 3-2 in my Melee pools. Adam and I played Melee doubles together, and we lost to Connor the Kid in a level 9 Ganondorf. But we'll just skip over that story, and we'll jump straight into our topic for today, which is analog versus digital shoulder buttons and shields, which I know that sounds like kind of a complicated topic, but the reason why I want to talk about it is because we get a lot of questions about what type of shield system we're going to use, and are we going to use a shield system at all? So analog versus digital is kind of has a big role to play in this conversation, because if you take a look at this controller, which we all know and love, these shoulder buttons are actually analog. They allow you to do some things that don't work for you if you're using a controller like this, where the buttons are digital. So to explain the differences between those, essentially digital means that it's either on or it's off. It's a 0 or it's a 1. It's not a continuous signal, it's a discrete signal. Whereas analog means that you're measuring the distance between 2 points. So it's a continuous signal that's going on. So for an analog controller, and it's actually easy to explain when you compare the other side of this controller, right? So if you've got a button like this, you press it, it is either on or it's off. I'm pressing it or I'm not pressing it. Whereas on the control stick, people call these analog sticks, right? And that's because it doesn't just measure, am I up or am I not? Am I left or am I right or up or down? It's actually measuring a whole continuum in here. So you can slightly tilt the controller, and that's how you get tilt attacks. Or you can jam it all the way over, and that's how you sprint or you get a smash attack. So it's measuring all of these degrees of movement inside this circle. And so the same things kind of happened with these shoulder triggers, right? On the shoulder triggers on this classic controller, when you press them down, it's actually measuring a whole continuum of values between 0, which it's not pressed down, and 1, where it's pressed all the way down. So it's measuring, I don't know exactly how many degrees of measurement they have in here, but I do know, in other platform fighters, you can do half clicks or full clicks, and there's a whole spectrum in between. So if we look at like Melee, you've got a light shield. And a light shield is cool because it lets you fiddle with how much space your shield is covering, how much traction you've got on the ground. It lets you change the way the opponents are attacking your shield. So there's a lot of depth that comes out of light shielding. And people really like that about Melee in particular. But in the future games from the genre, most of them either just use a digital shield, so it's either on or it's off, because they can't rely on these types of buttons being on every controller that people play with. So if we take a look at an Xbox controller, which you might play with if you're playing on a PC or you're playing a game like Rivals on the Xbox, these buttons are digital. They're either on or off. So you can't do a proper light shield mechanic with these. And people who are Melee purists have asked us a lot, like they really like the light shield mechanic. And frankly, I love it. I discovered it very early on, and it was one of the things that I used to kind of differentiate my gameplay in the early days of Melee when I was competing, and give myself a little edge over people who didn't understand it. And so it does add a lot of value. The problem is that to do a light shield mechanic on a controller like this, we have to put in multiple button presses, and we couldn't get the degree of measurement that we have on something like this anyways. So it's been suggested to me that I just do multiple button presses. Why don't you just have this button does a heavy shield, this button does a light shield, and maybe 2 buttons together does a shield in between. And the reason why I don't want to do that is not because it's mechanically unfeasible. We can totally build a system like that from a mechanical perspective. The problem is that it creates a learning problem for new players. And you'll hear me talk a lot about game design in that it's important for a game that is going to be accessible to a broad audience and fun for everybody to play, that it's easy to learn and then hard to master. And you get that out of this type of controller because someone who's new to the game, you don't have to teach them what a light shield is right away. You just tell them when you want to defend, you press one of these two buttons. And you can press either one you want, it doesn't matter. But these buttons matter because they are shields. They block things. They let you play defense. And that's all that a new player needs to unpack. Over time, as you progress in your experience in the game, you connect with other people, you start competing, you start learning about the nuances of how far down you're going to press it. Maybe you're going to Wavedash out of shield, so you're compressing one and then you use the other to Wavedash out of the shield while keeping the shield up until the last possible second. There's lots of nuance that evolves out of this system, but for a new player, it's just one piece of information they have to unpack. It's just this, and then nuance comes over time. Now, if we go with digital buttons, and I make you learn that all of these 4 buttons have different jobs to do, but they all defend, to a new player, when you put this in their hands and you say, this button does this type of shield, this button does this type of shield, this button does another one, and so on and so forth, doing combinations to try and get to a system that we liked from a game that is, 15 years old, that came from a system where they could guarantee that everybody was using an analog trigger and they controlled the whole ecosystem. To do that, what we're doing is we're taking a brand new player and we're dumping a whole lot of complexity on their head right away. We're saying, here, try and understand this. And you can try and just say, oh, just press this, and it's going to defend. And these other ones do other shields, but you don't need to worry about that right now. But what that does is it makes them feel like they don't understand what's going on. It makes them feel like there's a lot they have to learn. It's intimidating. It's hard for a new player to learn the nuances of 4 buttons that are all doing sort of the same thing, when what they really want to do is just get in and beat up their friends. So that type of information density dumped on the head of a new player doesn't make sense. From a game design perspective, it hurts our ability to reach a broader audience and get more people playing a game that you guys are going to love. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with what happened with light shielding. Light shielding is a good system, but it's really a great system because it exists with analog shoulder triggers, and people know that they're always going to have access to this. So what they did was they took a simple concept, and then over time you unpack nuance based on a single button press, instead of slamming people with a whole bunch of nuance and information right at the start, and then asking them to figure it out over time. It makes it harder for people to learn to do it this way if we were to do a light shield system like that. So that doesn't mean that we're not going to do some interesting and nuanced things with shielding. We've already been experimenting with some ways that we can enhance that system. We're changing the way certain things work with the way that it reads controllers, so that even if you're playing with a controller like this, you're going to get the type of responsiveness that you want out of shielding. But it's important to us as game developers that the game that we're creating is easy to learn and hard to master. So over time, you're going to unpack complexity. But if we try and front load all of that complexity in your learning experience in the game, it's going to drive more people out of the game than it's going to bring people in. And that doesn't mean that we are, pandering to noobs or any of that. It just means that we're making good decisions about the game funnel. This idea that you bring lots of people in and you get them playing at a fun level, and then over time, more like the people who are really dedicated, they unpack more nuance, they get better at the game experience, but that's a smaller part of the audience. What you want to do over time is create a game that's fun up here for everybody that's interested in it, and it remains fun and competitive as the funnel narrows down to those, very elite top-tier people who know every nuance and every number in your game. Without that broad funnel at the top, there's not enough people to make this experience down here really excellent for everybody and to keep a studio funded and to keep lots of eyeballs on it. And you see those types of decisions made on all kinds of products now, and not just competitive esports titles. But the whole point is you want to create an experience that's fun for a lot of people, not just a few people. And you can do that and still have depth and meaningful gameplay at that bottom of the funnel where the really elite players are. Now, we did just talk about controllers, and we partnered up with some friends at Controller Chaos who are super awesome. They were at Super Smash Con They're really great people. They've got a great operation, and they make incredible controllers. So we partnered up with them to make a Wavedash specific controller, which we're going to give away on Twitter this coming week. So I'm going to put links in the comments below for Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all of those things. Make sure you're following us there so that when the contest goes live, you can enter, and maybe you'll win this controller and play like our studio does. And I want to say again, what a fantastic experience Super Smash Con was. It really is the platform fighting community at its best. Wavedash is super proud to have been a part of it the last 2 years, and this year as a title sponsor. We plan on being back next year, and we hope you guys will see us there. So make sure that you check out the video that we aired on the stream there. We'll put the links below, and I will see you next week. Thanks.